back with the New York Sports Rapid Rundown. It was quite an eventful week of sports news in the Big Apple. This week, we're going to talk about the 3 hottest topics in New York sports, and we're going to do it with the executive producer of all the content that you see via Knicks Film School, the one and only Andrew Claudio. Andrew, what's up, man?
Dexter, it's so great to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm glad to have you because I've been such a big fan of what you guys do with Knicks Film School. I know I've said this before to you and J-Mac. Love what you guys are doing, but I'm glad to have you here for the Rapid Rundown where we get to talk about the biggest 3 topics in New York sports this week. And the reason I'm excited to have you here, because we get to talk about all your teams this week in this episode.
Yes.
So we got to do it. Now, we've got some things to talk about this week, including Zach Wilson reportedly not being sure if he wants to start again, only to end up starting at QB in Week 14. Another Knicks player is unhappy with their role on offense. But first, we're going to talk about the New York Yankees. Andrew, on Wednesday, the Yankees, they finalized a trade to bring one of the best hitters in baseball, Juan Soto, to the Bronx. The Yanks, they upgraded their outfield and their lineup in a 7-player trade. So I got to ask you this. It's a big-time move for the Yankees after a disappointing 82-80 season. They went out, they got a guy they were rumored to get. So, with this move, this is the question everybody's been talking about. Is the evil empire back?
So it's funny. First of all, as a Mets fan, it is hilarious that the first question you're asking me is about the Yankees.
Yes, and I messed up. This is not one of your teams. You're right. This is.
But
yes.
I'm always happy to talk about the Yankees.
I'm sure you
because
are.
they've just been in my life since I've started following baseball, when they became the evil empire. And look, as a baseball fan, as someone that just like enjoys the game and likes to talk about the sport in multiple ways, you'd think that this is a step one of many for the Yankees as far as the evil empire being back. So the answer to your question is we'll see. We'll see what the next moves are. As a Mets fan, the answer to your question is I hope not, because, you know, that's probably means bad news for everybody else. But, like, the history of the word evil empire, the nickname evil empire, comes from that 2003-2004 offseason when they were competing with the Red Sox for players. They won a bidding war for Jose Contreras. The Red Sox owner called them the evil empire, and then they went out and got Gary Sheffield and Kenny Lofton, and they capped it off with Alex Rodriguez. I think the difference here now is there's no certainty Soto's going to be here past this year. They traded for Juan Soto. They didn't extend Juan Soto. And if I can toot the Mets horn for a second, I don't think Scott Boras is going to not give Steve Cohen a chance to bid on Juan Soto next summer. So the difference between when they were the evil empire is they were the Yankees, and they could give you the most money. Now it's just that they're the Yankees, and we'll see if that's enough to keep them there long term.
Yeah, we will see, and you're right. That is a major difference between what the Yankees were and what they are now. But with this move being made, do the Yankees still need to make another big move to improve the team, knowing that they're likely, if they want to keep him, have to pay Soto, who you mentioned is a free agent after the season? Can they afford to get another big-name player? Because, like you said, they are no longer the team that you know is going to get the player and also keep him. So do you think this happens where they keep Soto? Can they get another big-name guy here?
So a reminder, these are not my people when I say speaking on behalf of Yankee fans. But I can hear Yankee fans saying, can they afford another bet? You have another big move? They absolutely can. This is the most profitable franchise in baseball. This may be the most profitable franchise in all of sports. But you look at what the Yankees need. They traded a lot of pitching, 4 arms, 2 of which were in their rotation last year down the stretch, probably their number 1 pitching prospect. They're going to make an honest try at Yoshinobu Yamamoto over in Japan. It's supposed to be the next great phenom to come over here. And this is the first real bidding war between Steve Cohen and the Steinbrenners. So I say this as a Mets fan. If it's a bidding war, I think the Mets will win. If Yamamoto doesn't want the most money, but a lot of money, could be the Yankees, could be the Mets, could be the Dodgers, it could be any place. And I think the Yankees could absolutely, if they get that and finish off Yamasoto, this offseason that Yankee fans are naming, then I think they have a good chance to be favorites going into next season.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they get Soto and Yamamoto, you know, and you know this as a Mets fan, Yankee fans are going to be coming for you.
Yes, they will.
Letting you know about that for a while. If they win, they'll let you know that.
Dexter, it doesn't take much for Yankee fans to let you know anything.
It does not. It does not
Yes.
take. It does not take a lot for them.
Exactly.
As you know, being around New York sports.
Indeed.
All right, we are going to talk some football. And on Tuesday, The Athletic, they reported that the Jets, they were looking to make another change at quarterback, and the team was leaning towards Zach Wilson taking over. Don't know how Andrew feels about Zach Wilson, but I'm sure we're about to find out. However, Wilson, who's been benched 3 times in the past 2 seasons, reportedly was reluctant to step back into the starting role. Then later in the week, Wilson was named a starter for Sunday's game against the Texans. Andrew, what did you make of this latest QB saga surrounding the Jets? What do you make of all this? Please make it make sense.
Make it make sense. We need longer than the allotted time today to make the New York Jets make sense, first of all. So I don't know if we have enough time to go through what this franchise puts its fan base through. Look, first of all, you understand if you're a professional football player and you see this and you're like, it's a bad look. You know, Tiki Barber this week in the afternoons on WFAN was very vocal about, like, there's only so many jobs as starting quarterback, and for you to voluntarily turn one down is a bad look. I also, respectfully to Tiki Barber, say this is also the Jets. Like, the most frustrating part about this, like, you're a Steelers fan, Dexter. If Mike Tomlin benches Kenny Pickett and then a couple weeks later decides to go back to him, he's taking the job. Like, other franchises don't have this problem, you know? Like, if Belichick benches Mac Jones and then goes to Bailey Zappi and then goes back to Mac Jones, he's back under center. With the Jets, it seems to be this is the franchise where stuff like this happens, where the head coach is texting a radio personality and it becomes an entire drama-filled thing for the whole week. When, you know, the head coach a couple years, like, I'll go all the way back to Rex Ryan, all the drama that his mouth got the franchise in trouble with. It seems to be a thing that only happens here, that I have a heart and understand if Zach Wilson's like, even if I don't even think Zach Wilson's that good, I can understand if he's like, I've had my try here. I'm good. And, you know, he's obviously going to start on Sunday, but I can't blame anybody for being like, I've had enough of this franchise.
No, I think you make an interesting point there, right? In that this speaks to more about the Jets culture than the actual problem of, even though I called it the QB carousel and the QB saga and everything going on there, this speaks more to the Jets culture as a whole and something maybe fans like Andrew should be mad at.
Also, the toughest part about analyzing Zach this season, because I'm one of the few Jet fans that I don't think he's good. I'm not one of those Jets fans that think he's actually good. You're just not looking at the game right. I do think this team had bigger problems than Zach Wilson's inabilities. I think their offensive line is battered, and they've had like 11 different offensive line combos this year. Their wide receiver room is Garrett Wilson, and then a bunch of third wide receivers and worse. Like, all the guys they went out to get to play with Aaron Rodgers have just not been productive. Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, the offensive coordinator, who's been super conservative and uncreative with this quarterback. And I got to say, like, all of these frustrations that Jets fans have been arguing with each other about, is Zach good? Is it that bad? Or are we letting the defense down? Is it the play calling? This all goes back to the fact that the season took a gigantic knockout blow 4 plays in. When the new franchise quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, gets hurt, we all waited 8 weeks before we actually started to mourn that or heal from that, because that upended the whole plan. And we're now dealing with the aftermath 11 weeks later.
And real quick, I'll ask you this, so we can put a bow on this with the Jets. Okay, they go back to Wilson as the starter this week against the Texans. But what about beyond? What about the future? Should the Jets move on from the former number 2 overall pick after the season?
I think this is going to be the last few starts you see of Zach Wilson in a Jets uniform. If you look at their salary cap complications, they didn't just get Aaron Rodgers for this year. Like, even if he retires, their cap hold for this quarterback is severe. So they've made a 2 to potentially 3-year commitment to Aaron Rodgers. So I think Zach is going to play however many games the rest of this season, maybe as long as he doesn't get hurt, like a healthy final 4 or 5 games. And then they'll see what they can get. A 5th-round pick, like Trey Lance was barely playing, and he got a 3rd-round pick. So they'll try to find him a new home. I'm very curious how good of a home they try to find him. I don't know if it's going to be an Obi Toppin situation where they set him to the perfect spot for him. But what I think the bigger revelation of this season was for the Jets is, even if Rodgers was healthy, this was not a Super Bowl good enough offense. It's a Super Bowl defense, but the problems they have on the O-line probably would still exist. The problems they would have in the wide receiver room and their playmaking, their play calling would still exist. And having to make Zach Wilson look good for 11, 12 weeks exposed all those problems. So Joe Douglas, because I think he's still going to be here, is going to have his work cut out for him. And this season showed just how much work there is.
Still is a lot of work to do. Jets fans, I know it was a disappointing season for you and other Jets fans, but the work will begin in the offseason once again. Hopefully, I feel like I've been saying this the last 2 weeks on the show. Hope. We've been talking about a lot of hope around the Jets. I'm not sure we should, but there's been talk about a lot of hope. But we will see. All right, let's talk some Knicks basketball. Andrew, obviously being executive producer for Knicks Film School, to which he does such an amazing job. Interesting week for the Knicks, because on Tuesday, after the Knicks were bounced from the in-season tournament by the Bucks, shooting guard Quentin Grimes said he was not happy with his role in the team's offense. He's the second Knickerbocker to complain about this in a couple of weeks. Grimes has struggled shooting the ball recently. Then we see the change Friday against Boston. Grimes removed from the starting lineup, Dante DiVincenzo in. Grimes played better. He was a little more aggressive in Friday's game. But here's the question for me. Who's to blame for Grimes not feeling involved in the offense right now? Because when you look at the starting unit, they've been playing well. Before he got moved out, I think there were 6.4 points per 100 possessions. The bench was 8.2 points per 100 possessions. It's pretty good for both units playing. But who's to blame when you have players saying, like Grimes, they're not feeling involved in offense?
So there's no one culprit here. I do think the head coach shares a little bit of blame. I know everybody's been begging for a more diverse playbook where it's less of a heavy isolation, a read and react type of offense. I do think the starting five that Quentin Grimes was a part of, he's just stuck with three isolation players that aren't great passers. Like Jalen Brunson, he's a 6-foot guard that is an isolation machine that is really good in the half court in isolation. We see it in clutch time how good he is. The problem is sometimes he can have some tunnel vision. Speaking of tunnel vision, he also shares the court with Julius Randle. And look, R.J. Barrett got off to this incredible start to the season. Then he went out with a knee injury and some migraines, and that version of RJ has not existed since coming back from the migraines. And look, I think Grimes was always frustrated being the fourth option on offense with those starters. The second unit plays with a little more ball movement. There also seemed to be a chemistry with DiVincenzo when he'd play with, like, you talked about the lineup data.
Yeah.
The starting lineup was a +6, the bench was a +8. Put Josh Hart and DiVincenzo in with the starters, and it was +24. Switch out DiVincenzo for Quickly, it was +30. So, like, there were other options at the 2 guard, which then brings me to the humanity of Quentin Grimes. And what I saw was a player that anytime he touched the ball, it was hot potato. And like he wasn't rotating into space at times to create passing lanes. Like there's multiple people involved, whether it's Tibbs not calling plays for him, the playmakers not trying to find him, but also Quentin Grimes kind of being in his head. He's a third-year player. He's still pretty young. Like that is a normal thing, especially when when you went down with a knee injury for a couple days, showed they have other options at your position. So my hope, I know the Celtics game put everybody down the dumps, but my hope is that we saw a version of Grimes that is a bit more aggressive, is in a system or with players that are much more easy to pass the ball to and going to look for him more. And, hopefully this gets squashed pretty easily. Yeah,
Knicks fans hoping that he's a bit more productive in his role off the bench. We'll see how long that stays, although good points by you bringing up the data with DiVincenzo playing with the starting unit and how that has looked. Okay, right now we got to assess the Knicks. We're at this really good point. We're at the quarter mark of the season. Knicks have played 21 games, 12-9 record. What's your evaluation of this team at this point in the season? Look, I know it's an interesting question because we're coming off them having back-to-back losses to the Bucks and the Celtics, so vibes are not that great with the Knicks right now. But what do you think of this Knicks team at this point in the season?
A little behind the scenes for everybody at home. We were originally going to do this a week ago, and I had to reschedule to today. If we had had this conversation a week ago and they had just come off their most impressive win of the season in Toronto, the vibes would have been so much better. That team, like, had 30 assists that night. It was a back-to-back against the tough Toronto team that had just ended the Suns' winning streak. And Randall looked amazing. The bench unit looked amazing. Like RJ was passing. They were just finding ways to really put the nail in the coffin on a team that they're better than. And then a week later, they played the two best teams in the conference, and it seems like a reality check has set in on the fan base. Like, oh, we're not as good as them. Like last year, the Bucks weren't as good, and we played them much closer. The Celtics, we beat them 3 out of 4 times, including both times up in Toronto Dominion, as I call it. Like, I don't call it the Garden. We can't call that arena in Boston the Garden. It's just against my religion, unfortunately.
Can't do that. I'm with you.
But, like, there is a clear frustration I sense from the fan base that what we thought this team was last year it's not replicable because of how much better Boston and Milwaukee got. And because of what happened in the play-in tournament, I keep calling it the play-in tournament, the in-season tournament, the Knicks ended up playing an extra game against those two teams. So I wonder what this team, really 10 games from now, well, let me backtrack. 12 games from now will be the real temperature check. They play 2 games against teams they should beat. They play Toronto again and then Utah. Their last 10 games of 2023 are against teams over 500. That will tell you. Like, it's not, like, the 2 against Milwaukee, those are the elite teams. They play Minnesota again, they play OKC. Get through that stretch, and you're 5-6 games over 500, still in the playoff hunt. Schedule lightens up. Your vibes will start to return. Where the Knicks are now, as far as the temperature check, I think the reality is starting to set in. We're battling for 3rd place at the moment. We're battling to be the 3 seed at best, maybe the 4 seed, maybe the 5th seed like they were last year. And, you know, transactional talk, there's going to be a talent upgrade eventually to this team that, you know, this front office has made no hidden agendas about what they're trying to do. So I know that I'm kind of all over the place, but it's because this team, the vibes have been all over the place. It's been as high as we're a conference finalist contender, and then this week almost brought that all crashing back down to reality that, no, we're, at best, we can get like a first-round win and call it a day. You know? Yeah,
and I think the thing right now is the Knicks are 2-9 at this point against teams with winning records. They are 0-5 against the Celtics and the Bucks. So I think fans, as you said, the vibe has been, all right, maybe we're just middle of the Eastern Conference, which I would like to note is not terrible when you have young players and assets like the Knicks do in draft picks. It's not a bad place to be in the middle. You don't want to be in the middle when you don't have the assets. That's when it's bad.
If they were the Bulls and they were just like stuck into this team, or if they were like Minnesota last year, there was a lot of questions about that team because they've gone all in on that roster. It's clearly paying dividends now, but where the Knicks are, there's clearly a move to be made, maybe a couple moves to be made. So their things may not be great at the moment, but we're like 2 wins away from it being like, all right, you know what, maybe we can win the conference final, get to a conference final. Why not?
Right.
And who knows what happens like the rest of this week. I can see it already. They win against Toronto. They win a road game in Utah, and it's, all right, so Tibbs, Coach of the Year, like, look what he's doing with this team without a superstar.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, the vibes can swing in many different directions. Yeah. Andrew Claudio, he's going to be on top of it all season, producing the great content that he does for Knicks Film School. Andrew, I'm so glad you were able to stop by for the New York Sports Rapid Rundown. We got to do this again sometime.
Absolutely, Dex. Thank you for having me. And everybody, check out Knicks Film School.
Yes.
You can see me wearing the merch. Check out our merch store. Keep you warm throughout the holidays. And Dexter, again, thank you for having me, man.
Glad to have you. As he said, check out Knicks Film School. Check them out on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button for them as well, too. So much great content. Appreciate you, Andrew. We'll do it again next time on the New York Sports Rapid Rundown.